Hello there ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul TX141 Walsh, welcoming you to an all new World of Warships gameplay today on our channel. In this episode we'll be featuring the newly arrived Tier 3 German destroyer known as the G-101. We're in a Tier 4 match, a domination game on the map New Dawn, and we're staying in alone today. The purpose of this video is for us to provide our thoughts on this ship, and let me provide you a quick synopsis. I absolutely love this ship, and I get the feeling it is a good indicator of what is to come as you progress up the tiers in the German destroyer line. For reference, I'm currently working my way through the V170, the Tier 4 German destroyer. So our starting situation, we spawned in on the western edge of the map, our team taking a southwestern spawn. But what we quickly pick up is the fact there are only 2 destroyers in our team including our own ship, which means we cannot afford to be aggressive and rely on the coverage of friendly destroyers to support us as we make our way towards a flag. Instead, we need to work with our team in their larger ships in order to bring them into the engagements, and as a result, work as a group to bring down our foes. We cannot do it by ourselves. And that is one of the key things I very quickly learnt with the G-101, that this ship cannot afford to become isolated. And that is for a number of reasons, but the main one is in terms of its overall speed and manoeuvrability, whereby the maximum speed of the ship is 33.5 knots. A little bit lackluster compared to the max speed of the likes of the Wakataki and the Campbelltown, your T3 counterparts, have maximum speeds in excess of 35 knots, if not 35 knots itself, which means you already lose the edge on being able to get away from any destroyers who decide to be aggressive against you. But on top of that, what that means is, if you are invited into an engagement with an enemy destroyer and they lure you back towards their teammates, running away is just that little bit harder because you don't have the speed unless you resort to your speed boost to get away outright, thereby relying on the 8% speed boost that the consumable provides. As for your turning circle, it's 520 meters, which isn't too much of a handicap, and on top of that you have a rudder shift time of 2.9 seconds, again quite nice. But also consider this ship has quite a wide profile for a destroyer, which means it's susceptible to picking up hits as it's running away or running towards opponents, and on top of that in general it's very susceptible to dive bomber attacks, which we're about to see. So we open fire in our engagement against a G-101 here, whereby we're both pushing towards A. The problem is the enemy carrier is supporting their destroyer quite closely, and a set of dive bombers are coming in. We do score some hits on the G-101, but notice how much damage we take when we get hit by the dive bombers. There we go, we take a hit, 1,700 knocked off our health pool. So we've already lost approximately a fifth of our health. And on top of that, what we have to consider now is we've been forced out of the objective for the time being. But the G-101 on the enemy team has given us a lifeline. They decided to smoke up on the opposite side of the objective as we toss our torpedoes towards them. Now we're not expecting them to hit, and we'll talk about their characteristics a little bit later. But the fact that the G-101 is not being aggressive in their smokescreen, but instead just continue to open fire because we are making the mistake of still shooting when we could stop shooting and become undetected, more on that in a second as well. We're pushing in towards A now, and we're going to set up our own smokescreen in order to hide our own ship, thereby neutralising the cap for the time being. We're looking at the enemy ships making their way over, a Wyoming and a Miyogi as well, as we lose our engine to the G-101, but fortunately now they're starting to miss as we become undetected in our own smoke. But as soon as we say that and shells are still ringing over our heads, we can see that off to our starboard side there is an enemy Clemson, the Tier 4 American destroyer that everybody loves. Now that thing, if it gets close enough, will rip us apart with its batteries, so we need to make sure we can keep our distance. On top of that, we shouldn't sit inside our smokescreen for too long, because what we have to remember is their torpedoes have a 5.5 kilometer range, and we're on the edge of that already in our smoke. Our smoke only lasts for 48 seconds, and we can see how quickly it dissipated on the enemy G-101 as we throw some shells towards them, and we try to reset their progress in capturing the point. We throw in some armor piercing and pick up 3 overpens and 3 defend flags. We make our way out of our smokescreen as it begins to dissipate, timing it to perfection, and we set the enemy G-101 on fire, knock out their engine, and then knock out their engine again as they go to repair it. We're running out of the objective because the torpedoes were coming into our smokescreen, and they'll dissipate right in the centre of the forward edge of it, and on top of that we're now in a 2 versus 1. A Clemson and a G-101, and they also have support from their 2 battleships. Our battleships and cruisers are still making their way towards A, so we need to provide a little bit more delay in action and perhaps bait one of these destroyers to come at us in a 1 versus 1. Except we're not going to play clean, we're going to be dirty about it. That Clemson is coming for us, and we're going to make them pay. So now it worked our way out of the southwestern corner of Alpha for the time being, the Clemson comes charging on and is making their way towards the very northwestern corner of the map. We're going to use our torpedoes here to ambush them, firing off our singular bow facing starboard side one, and then firing off our 2 sets mounted in the centre line amidships. Our torpedoes are quite fast at 52 knots and can do a maximum damage of 10,600 upon hit, and on top of that they reload every 38 seconds, so we'll quickly have our torpedoes back again. Oh dear Clemson, you don't know what's coming. We're now coming out a little bit wide to bait them onto this. They're going to turn into our torpedoes, and as they try to snap back out to avoid them, a little bit too late. First kill in the bag, a devastating strike. So, what else do we need to know about our torpedoes? Well, unique to this ship, and indeed its predecessor, the Tier 2 V25, is the fact that it has bow-mounted torpedo launchers, meaning you can fire torpedoes forwards. They're only singular launchers, one on the starboard side, one on the port side, but it's a nice to have, simply because it means you don't have to turn full broadside to torpedo enemy ships, whether they be enemy destroyers or battleships, giving you a leading edge in torpedo engagements. We reset the Miyogi's work on capturing Alpha using the high gun arcs that we have on our 105mm cannon, and then we switch on our speed boost. Now, we've provided enough time for the enemy team to guess that perhaps we're retreating southwards towards our battleships, but instead we're going to charge towards the enemy Miyogi and hopefully use our bow-mounted torpedo launchers alongside our amidships centerline torpedo launchers to rip apart the enemy battleship. Although we also note the enemy G-101 still supporting their battleship. A very smart idea, they are going to spot us before we can get close enough, but the health differential here between us and the G-101 is going to work out in our favour. As we still have a lot of our health remaining, they do not. And they also appear to be stock in terms of their hull. We open fire of our guns here, scoring 2 hits, and we go to finish them off, picking up multiple hits and our second kill. The enemy Miyogi appears to be sailing broadside and not changing directionality. Our first torpedo missed, and we fire off a full set from our centerline torpedo tubes, and they're not going to be dodging those by the looks of things as we make our way away, and they try to turn their guns towards us. They're more focused on shooting us by the looks of things than dodging what's coming at them. Another kill in the bag. Another devastating strike, and we're now up to 47,000 damage as we make our way away from the northwestern edge of Alpha and pull back towards our battleships finally. Now we're down to approximately half of our health, just over in fact, as we take a set of hits from the enemy Wyoming, at least one high explosive shell, and we're really using our health pool to great effect here, making sure that we're using it in order to absorb shots from our opponents, whether large or small caliber shells. So let's talk about the guns a little bit. We talked about the torpedoes. Well, actually we didn't talk about one key thing on the torpedoes, and that is their range. i.e. 7 km range, providing this ship with the ability to stealth torpedo to a small extent. Where its detectability by sea with camouflage in our configuration, we do not have concealment expert, is 6.5 km, and by air it's 3.1 km. On top of that, when you shoot, you have a detectability of 13.1 km, another key weakness of this ship, and indeed I believe one across all German destroyers. The fact that if you fire your guns in open seas, everybody's going to know you shot your guns, simply because you're going to get seen from such a distance. Your detectability goes from that of a destroyer all the way out to that of your average cruiser. But regardless, we're now making our way back into A, and we've informed our teammates, look, you guys go focus the enemy battleships and keep them busy. We'll go and take objective Alpha. Because we can afford to, we have the speed to do so compared to cruisers and battleships in general. At the same time, if we can pop some cheeky shots in against our foes, we will. But remember, we're not going to shoot too regularly because it's open waters technically, although as we make our way towards the eastern edge of A, where there's a greater number of land masses and therefore greater concealment, then we can open fire perhaps and not be spotted. So this is something you have to be careful of, the fact that you can be detected in open waters so easily. So as we start to take Alpha, let us move on to our guns. Now you have 4 105mm batteries, whereby these have a 3.6 second reload with basic fire and training on your captain, and they can turn for 180 degrees in 18 seconds. On top of that, at their maximum range of 9 km, which isn't too bad, they have a maximum dispersion of 82 meters, again reasonable, allowing you to take on enemy destroyers quite nicely as we've already seen. With regards to your shells, regardless of whether you're firing high explosive or armour piercing, you have a muzzle velocity of 715 meters per second. Your high explosive is rather weak, and that is typical of German ships in general, whereby you can do a maximum upon citadel of 1200 damage, and you have a 5% fire chance, so fires are not going to be too regular. And we can see that within 31 hits we've only picked up 1 fire, and we now pick up the capture on Alpha and we're making our way towards Bravo, informing our teammates as well in the chat. The other thing to note is that when you fire your armour piercing, this is where things get juicy, as, unlike German ships in general, known for their armour piercing capabilities, you'll do a maximum damage upon Citadel of 2,300, which is very nice and allows you to rip apart enemy carriers and lightly armoured enemy cruisers, such as the Tier 3 British light cruiser, can't remember the name of it for the life of me, Caledon, that's the one. You can rip that apart quite quickly, as even if you don't Citadel it, you can penetrate and cause an immeasurable amount of damage. And that's another thing to note about this ship. Bow on it is incredibly susceptible to armour piercing shells, whereby in my own G-101 I've shot armour piercing at a bow on G-101 on the enemy team and I've knocked off 2,500 health with 2 or 3 shell hits. So something to be wary of, and again, that trait of German destroyers being susceptible to armour piercing already being applied in the lower tiers. Now we charge towards B and we can see that the enemy Wyoming, a tier 4 battleship, is also making their way towards Bravo. Now we're going to get there first, but what we need to do is essentially take the objective from the enemy team and then delay the Wyoming, if we can't take them out outright, in taking back Bravo, as we can't afford to take them on in a gun battle. They'll rip us to pieces with our health pool, and whilst our torpedoes can rip them apart, we're maximum speed of 52 knots, they're a little bit slow, and that means if the Wyoming's got a good head on them, or just a little bit of randomness in their movements, they'll be able to dodge the torpedoes, and by now they should already know that B's being captured. The foe are capturing it is not being seen, so it's got to be a destroyer, that remaining G-101, as seen from their perspective. So we decide to fire off our centerline torpedoes, our twin torpedo tubes, directly in front of the Wyoming, in terms of the path they would be coming along if they were to come into Bravo. We want to force them as much as possible to take an approach which is going to push them towards the northeastern corner of Bravo. The reason for that is we're going to delay their ability to take the objective back, and in doing so this means that when our allies are done beating up the enemy battleships, they're still chasing one down towards the northern edge of the map, that Wyoming is going to be incredibly exposed. We also kick up our smoke screen here to remain undetected, as the Wyoming is getting close enough now in order to be able to see us with our detectability values. Our torpedoes are almost reloaded again, that 38-second reload coming in handy, and we will fire off another set. The Wyoming is going to dodge our initial set, I haven't been drinking, I promise, even though it's Christmas, as we capture a second objective, and we now leave Bravo. The Wyoming is now in the objective, we fire off another set of torpedoes in the same direction, technically as before, and pretty much along the same tracks, as we want to force the Wyoming to take that wider path through B. As we make our way away, we get our guns ready. We've got high explosive loaded for now, and we're going to see the difference between high explosive and armour piercing very shortly, how the armour piercing is more effective in general, or at least against a Wyoming in this situation. We start to dump in some high explosive here, missing at first, and then we toss in a few more rounds and we start to pick up the hits, getting a reset on the Wyoming but doing no actual damage, although very light smattering of damage there. Most of our shells are just breaking on contact and not doing any HP damage. And we can see how the Wyoming is opening up their main batteries but not scoring any hits, dispersing around us. We're quite fortunate. We pick up a couple more defend base ribbons. And we dump in some armour piercing now for good effect, and we can see how we'll knock off quite a bit of health. Not enough to kill them outright, we just want to keep them busy for now. Now we're not being detected as we go behind a landmass here, so we know we're safe for the time being, but a little game sense in the second is going to tell us that the enemy Wakataki, the remaining destroyer in the enemy team, is actually making their way up the western side of the map, and they're quite close to us. The Wyoming at this point opens fire on an unseen target on our screen. It's one of our friendly cruisers by the looks of things, as we dump in a few more rounds, and now we're detected. Now could it be the Wyoming or something closer to us? Well, it appears that the Wyoming is only now going to see us from behind a landmass, so as a result we have to expect there's a ship actually a little bit closer to us. But for the time being we're just dumping in a bit more armour piercing on the Wyoming, getting those resets off and trying to bring down their health a little bit more before they can get off a repair. We continue to dump in the rounds and pick up the base defence, resetting their progress in capturing the objective constantly, and they open up with a broadside salvo, completely missing, not giving enough lead, and the Wakataki has just been spotted southwest of us. So we quickly turn our attention towards it. We've done our job in holding up the Wyoming, preventing them from taking the objective back, and now we'll charge towards the Wakataki with our speed boost intact, having just activated it, and we're opening up with high explosive. But what you're going to see very shortly, we're tracking the range indicators on our mini-map of our guns, and we're going to get off one more reset on this Wyoming right on the edge of our gun range, 9 kilometres. Literally dead on 9 kilometres as they sail into our shells, which are coming towards them. We're going to get a couple more resets. There we go, that Wyoming is not going to take that objective, and now we've got a friendly cruiser coming down from the northwestern corner of the map to finish them off. We've done our job and the enemy Wakataki has beached itself. Now this is where having the bow mounted torpedo tubes works to great effect, because you can fire some torpedoes directly towards your foe and you don't have to do as much movement. And then we fire off a couple of torpedoes to what would be essentially their left, so it'd be off to their port side as they're trying to reverse off the landmass here to make sure if they do get off that landmass in time, we're going to have additional torpedoes ready to smash them to pieces. Now it's still being detected by the enemy Wyoming, but the idea here of being detected as we open fire is that the enemy Wakataki may become more interested in shooting at us as we're quite low in terms of our HP. But what we are going to see is that singular torpedo from the bow is going to kill them. Bingo. Our 4th kill. So with that, we now make our way back towards the centre of the map and we can see how our friendly St. Louis is taking down the Wyoming very gradually. And come on dear fellow, you can do it. Well, that appears in the end our friendly Kaiser gets the job done, but we can see how we baited that Wyoming long enough in order to make sure our allies could finish the job. Now unfortunately the enemy carrier is using their planes quite effectively and they're bringing a lot of dive bombers towards our St. Louis, fortunately for us not onto our ship, as we really don't want to take any more bombs if we can afford it. So in the meantime, what else is there to discuss about the ship? Well, when we talk about the armour of the ship, it's only 6 to 10mm, and we've already said the bow on the ship is vulnerable to armour piercing. In general, you're not going to feel it too much, because unless a player is aware of the fact they should be firing armour piercing at you in given circumstances, really you're just going to get used to the fact you're going to get hit by a lot of high explosive. But what is important to note is that due to the rather limited durability of the ship's modules, the engine in particular on the ship in my experience will get knocked out very quickly and in multiple successive salvos instant on your ship. In some instances I've had an enemy destroyer charge towards me and knock out my engine 3 times in a row after 3 sets of shells have hit me, and it's very frustrating. So the last stand skill is very important on this ship, as we fire off our torpedoes towards the enemy Nassau here, hoping to take them out, as we've got the ability to and we're hoping they're distracted in engaging our friendly St. Louis. As they finish it off, and we dump in a couple of armour piercing rounds, only one getting through. We can see how we switch back to not armour piercing, we switch back to high explosive, and we're just not really achieving much. But it's not our intention to bring down this Nassau, we just want to push them away from the objectives. The reason being, we've only got 3 minutes left and our team's got the advantage now in terms of points. Not just in terms of the objectives on the map, but also the point score in the middle, top of your screen. We pick up a torpedo hit and also cause some flooding on the Nassau with the bow mounted torpedo once again. They're probably aware to start dodging the torpedoes once they saw that we turned broadside. That's going to be enough to cause a little bit of extra damage through the flooding, and we now make our way into the B objective once again. Now the logic here is we want to charge down the enemy carrier, and on top of that there is an enemy British light cruiser that is on very low HP and would make for a juicy Kraken. And if you're wondering about your anti-air capabilities on this ship, well, you have a 7.92mm defensive AA gun, if not 2, and they do very little damage per second. Not worth really talking about, your anti-air capabilities are not very good on this ship. We open up on the enemy Caledon here, in fact, yep, it's the tier 3 British light cruiser, hoping to take them out of the game for our Kraken. And by Jove, we get it, a penetration with armour piercing, and that's the Kraken unleashed, as we take a couple of dive bomber hits once again, showing how the ship is once again vulnerable to dive bombers. And our machine guns are opening up, very effective as we can see, and we throw some torpedoes towards the Nassau. We weren't using a lead indicator, we're just throwing them down the channel that we saw the Nassau through, so if they decided to turn into that channel, they'd walk straight into the torpedoes. Their logic being, well, they're going to see the torpedoes coming at them because of the enemy fighters above us. I can't turn that way now, and I can't come on to B. I've got to go all the way around the western landmass, i.e. grid square, which looks to be F4. So we're just delaying them once again, preventing them from getting to the objective. In the meantime, the enemy carrier is now sending a set of torpedo bombers. Are they coming towards us or towards our allies? Well, the enemy carrier is very smart at what they do here. Essentially, they direct their torpedo bombers to fly towards us. The reason being, this means that we start to get apprehensive. We can't charge that Langley through fear of being attacked by enemy torpedo bombers. So we start to turn away and we fluff our torpedoes. We're well outside effective range here as the Langley sails away from us. And then, having noticed that our torpedoes have been launched, the Langley decides to throw their torpedo bombs now towards our friendly battleships. Very well played to them. They caused us to make a severe mistake. We should have really pushed in. And we still got that annoying little bugger of a fighter squadron right above our head, but it's not going to matter too much. Reason being, there's only a minute left in the game. The Langley, well, they'll get their dive bombers up once more, but even if they do hit us, our team's got a significant points advantage, so even if we do get killed, it's not the end of the world. Their torpedo bombers have just dropped their remaining torpedoes, and our South Carolina was very healthy as they're turning away from the torpedoes as seen on the minimap. So we don't have to worry too much, and the enemy Nassau seems to have taken their attention elsewhere towards one of our battleships north of us. So the only thing we should expect now is to take another set of hits from the enemy dive bombers. Here they come again. Oh, great. And fingers crossed we're not going to get taken out. The enemy Nassau, as we can see, has turned their attention fully towards one of our battleships. Those dive bombers are coming in. We're just going to wiggle a little bit off, make a port side turn, and we're going to get hit. No, fortunately for us, they missed. And we throw in a couple of last little shells towards the Nassau. They're not going to get there in time. And that's the game. Well, that was a rather tiring game, but nonetheless we picked up the victory, and for it we received 235,088 silver credits, 2,829 experience, and on top of that, 3 achievements. A single Kraken Unleashed for destroying 5 or more enemy ships in a given battle, and on top of that 2 devastating strikes, whereby we destroyed an enemy ship with a single artillery salvo, torpedo salvo or aircraft attack by causing damage to over 50% of the destroyed ship's normal HP. The 2 instances here being firstly on the enemy Clemson with our torpedoes, and then again with our torpedoes on an enemy Myogi. In terms of our battle performance, we dealt out 76,965 HP of damage, consisting of 117 target hits for our main batteries, 7 torpedo hits, 7 incapacitations, 5 enemy ships destroyed, 2 fires set, 5 floods caused, 18 base defend ribbons, and on top of that, 2 bases captured. Looking at the team scores, we can see that we went the extra mile for our team, whereby we picked up first place in terms of base experience earned, 1,886, being almost double that as second place. But when we think about it, did we really carry our team to victory? Well, personally I don't think so. We're just very objective orientated in our approach, making a rather illustrious effort to take Alpha before holding down Bravo for as long as possible before backup arrived in order to finish off the attacking enemy Wyoming. Looking at our detailed report, we have 2 key items to note here. The first one is in terms of a reminder of our objective-orientated approach, whereby we secured all of our team's capture points, 120 out of 120, and on top of that we secured just under half of our team's defence points, 172 out of 350. The other more important item to note is in terms of the vulnerability of our ship's engine, whereby our engine was knocked out 5 times in this match. That's a personal record for me in terms of having my engine knocked out on any given ship, let alone a destroyer, and something that can be countered quite nicely via the last stand skill for your captain. And finally, coming on to our credits and experience earned, we can see that after deductions, we walked away with 206,382 silver credits. In conclusion, the G-101 in my opinion is a well-rounded destroyer for its tier, whereby it has a limited stealth torpedo capability and some fast-firing, rather accurate main armament to match. However, it is not the most manoeuvrable ship, especially in terms of top speed, meaning this is not a destroyer that you want to go charging off into the distance with without the support of your teammates close by, as very quickly, if the situation becomes unfavourable, you do not have the ability to run away without resorting to your speed boost, and even then, if it is an encounter against enemy destroyers, their speed boost will enable them to surpass you in overall speed. Instead, stay close to your teammates, stick around the objective, and work together in order to secure victory for your team. And I strongly recommend that you give this ship a go before the end of 2016, as it is great fun and it will make for a fitting farewell to what has been an absolutely awesome year for this channel. And so I've been TX141. And if you've enjoyed this video, as always, why not leave a like, comment or subscribe for future World of Warships videos on my channel. But as I say, ladies and gentlemen, this is probably going to be the last video of 2016 for me, so have a great New Year's Eve celebration and I will see you all on the other side. But until next time, take care and fair seas.